I think there were a lot of people pointing fingers at those of us in the leather community because we were known as a sexual culture. And we were getting a lot of blame. Certainly fisters, for example, got a lot of blame early in the crisis, assuming that that was the cause. It took a while for them to move away from stigmatizing the more sexual aspects of our culture and realizing that no, we weren't by any means the cause. It was simply, a virus. The leather community responded quickly, quicker than the bulk of the gay male community, probably because we were impacted rather significantly. We were a highly sexual culture, and therefore we were impacted pretty significantly in the beginning. And the other thing is that I think that we were very comfortable talking about sex. We were able to talk about safer sex in a way that others couldn't because we had a lot of alternatives. We didn't have to always have insertive sex necessarily in order to be turned on and to play and to really enjoy our sexuality. And secondarily, I think that this allowed us to address the safer sex aspects head on. And it's no accident that the leather community was often very first on the vanguard of creating safer sex information, manning safer sex hotlines, disseminating information. It simply was just natural for us to talk about sex. Without the leather community, I don't think the effort to band together for the AIDS crisis would have been kickstarted quite as quickly. I do think that we were the vanguard. We were the vanguard on safer sex information. We were the vanguard of telling people alternatives to insertive sex at the time so that they wouldn't get sick. We were the vanguard of the volunteer efforts. We were the vanguard of the fundraising efforts. Again, not to discount anyone else, but we were there at the very beginning, at the very start, in a very powerful way. Here in San Francisco, a large number of the initial fundraisers happened within the leather community. In fact, you couldn't go to a leather event early on in the crisis and not have it be a fundraiser of some sort. I think we were on the cutting edge of that. The AIDS Emergency Fund here in San Francisco was founded with leather roots by leather men and women. And I think that happened throughout the community where we were really active raising money, founding organizations, staffing hotlines, taking care of people, cooking meals. It really ran the gamut. And quite frankly, it became such a focus that it was almost the #1 thing that happened during our events was fundraising and talking about how we could help in some way, because it was a crisis. I think that the leather community responded in such a powerful and cohesive way in large part because we were a subculture within a subculture. We were a very bonded, connected set of folks who socialized, played, had sex, and generally communed in a way that maybe other aspects of the gay male community did not. And I think that bonded us in such a close way that when any of our own got sick or a partner of our own got sick, we banded together pretty quickly and we helped in a way that I think was pretty remarkable in light of the fact that, especially in the beginning, we didn't know a lot. There were places who would not do funerals. There were doctors who would not touch an AIDS patient. And I can remember many times, I'm about to tear up a little bit, when people were sick and we didn't even know how it was transmitted in the beginning and no one cared. They hugged them, they held them, they took care of them, they bathed them. And I think it was our strong bond as a community that really made a difference. A moment in time I clearly remember that for me summed up both the good and the bad of the AIDS crisis was when a friend was dying and there were a number of us around his bed and he was literally breathing his last breaths. And he had all of his friends around him. And he had so much love and so much care that in the midst of this horrific thing happening to this person, again, I'm going to tear up a little, he had so much love and so much help that for months previous, they did anything he needed without even asking, usually. And I saw that time and time again. I saw men and women helping others and loving others, sometimes people they didn't even know very well. And that is a beautiful thing, and I'm glad I remember that. I think the AIDS crisis shaped the modern leather community in a few ways. First of all, it spawned a lot of fundraising that has continued to this day. So the leather community is a fundraising machine, quite frankly, and whether it be leather contest title holders and contests, or it be clubs and organizations or events, fundraising is a key component. And while we certainly raised funds before the AIDS crisis, after that, we raised so much during the crisis that after it kind of kept going. So that's one thing. Second, I think that it brought together the men and women of the leather community, much like it did in the mainstream community, quite frankly. The women were there taking care of the men in a very selfless way, quite frankly. And I don't think the men ever forgot that. And I don't think they should forget that. And the legacy of that is that now, today, the modern leather community is much more blended, men and women, and frankly, all orientations, in a way that didn't happen pre-AIDS crisis. So I think that's another legacy, and I think it's a good legacy. The era of AIDS has taught me that we as human beings are very resilient. That's one thing. It's taught me that there's a lot of love, even for total strangers. That's another thing. And it's taught me that leather folk, leather people, leather men and women can proudly live their identity, proudly experience and enjoy their sexuality, and they can adapt to any situation that happens, including something as horrific as the AIDS crisis. My hope is that the leather community continues to be on the vanguard of progressive thinking around HIV. I think they are to this day. I think the uptake of PrEP, for example, in the modern community is greater in the men's leather community than it is generally in the gay male community. I think that we can be, in San Francisco, probably first, and hopefully the nation and the world, the generation that eliminates HIV essentially. Obviously, a cure will eliminate completely, but we can get to zero, essentially zero transmissions. The San Francisco model that is currently happening today is moving in that direction very, very, very quickly, and our rates of transmissions are plummeting. And I expect that to continue because I think the San Francisco model of care and treatment and prevention is a model that is going to work. It is working today, and I think it will be replicated nationally and worldwide. And eventually we will have a community that really doesn't have to deal with HIV.